Today we're going to do a YouTube video on primary tillage concerning the chisel. It's again focused mainly on you guys that are vertical till. The primary pass in the fall has to be done right for vertical till to be successful. For you guys that are doing primary tillage in the fall and following it with horizontal tillage in the spring, it's not quite as crucial. You're going to take care of those issues if you don't get full with shatter with your disc or soil finisher in the spring. But for you guys in vertical till, remember we're leveling from the surface with our vertical tillage. So the secret to good vertical tillage is getting your primary tillage right now here in the fall itself. Last time we talked about inline rippers. Today we're talking about chisel plows. We're probably talking more about hybrid chisel plows that are set to do full width shatter. And when I say full width shatter, we want full shatter up there in that 4 to 6 inches at the surface of the soil that we can operate in next spring. Typically, this is going to be a function of depth and shank width, just like we do on all tools. And a good rule of thumb is half your shank width is the depth the tool is going to have to be pulled at. So one of the challenges we run into, let's say with a 510 disc ripper on 30-inch centers, is the depth requirement to get full shatter for those tools is almost out of our horsepower range. So it's a situation where those tools are designed for conventional tillage, where you would come back and take out the untilled part with your finishers and your disc in the spring. As we look at vertical tillage, we typically look at shanks that are closer together. Today, the hybrid chisels looking at 16-inch spacings on the shank, letting us go 8 or 9 inches deep, shallowing it up some, so one, we can pull it and get full shatter, but we still have to have residue flow, so it gets us some design issues there as far as depth of the frame and length, and to get 200 plus bush residue through the machine itself. Today we're going to be shooting some video of two different vertical till tools. Both of these are what I call hybrid chisels, but their design is different. One is going to be set up to bury residue. So as we think about what we want to do, we got to have full shatter no matter what we're doing. Then the question is, how much residue do we want to bury or put in the ground itself? So the two tools we're running today can do one or the other, meaning that one is set up to bury residue based on the configuration of the disc in front of the machine. So they start the residue on a roll, start to tuck it in, and then the shanks do the rest out the back. And we can turn, in this case, well over 200 bushel corn residue, fairly black when we get done, which means it'll be very little residue left there at the surface to deal with come next spring. The second tool has straight cutters on the front, and those straight cutters are designed just to size residue so it'll flow through the machine and stay on top. That would be something that we'd run in the bean stubble, for instance, and want residue cover. Now, who would buy these tools? What would make the difference? Well, definitely when we're talking about the straight cutters and leaving lots of residue on top, that's a tool that's really loved by the guys that are doing no-till. So if I'm a no-tiller and I like my residue on top, I like my ground protected, I can use this tool to fix ruts in the field from, let's say, sprayers or other problems. Definitely we can use them to fix pH problems if we're incorporating limestone. So we can get the tillage and we can get some mixing action down below, but still have some residue for cover on top, so we can get back into a no-till program as fast as we can to keep that bean stubble from blowing away on us in the spring. Now the second tool that buries residue, again, that's kind of tool that our corn-on-corn guys like. They like to tuck and bury some of that residue in so it can decompose and get out of the way so they don't have to deal with it in their corn-on-corn program. It's also one of the ways that we manage disease. In disease problem fields, we can bury some of that residue and move that residue along faster to get rid of it. So it really comes down to which tool you're going to buy and how much residue you want left on top. And then there's a number of crossover tools, for instance, like the Quadratill, that you can change the settings of the tool and make it operate like a high residue chisel plow, or you can bury it and make it work like a tool set up to bury residue itself. So you can do it all in one. So it really depends on what you're going to do with the machine as far as how you want your residue set up to be handled. But then again, once we get the residue question answered, we still got to get full with shatter. And you're going to get full with shatter out there by paying attention to conditions and soil types and how things are changing in the field. So again, we're going to go out here and set these tools. Now my recommendation when you're setting the tool is you want full width shatter on the shanks before the discs are involved. So depending on your tool, we would suck the disc up as high as we could get them so they're doing very little tillage, and we would set our depth with the shanks itself. So we want full width shatter behind that machine, and once we reach that, then we're going to go ahead and set the disc in and get to a point where we can handle the amount of residue we want coming out the back and how level we would be out coming out the back. But you should be able to watch the flow through that machine. As you're getting full width shatter, you will notice the soil will flow through there like water flowing through a rapid. Versus big chunks busting out and rolling over, you'll see more of a uniform flow because the soil is lifting all the way across from shank to shank and shattering at the surface itself. So you look for that flow out there, you look for that uniform wave coming through it itself. Now, we need it somewhat level, so our target, of course, is after this thing overwinters that we would have less than 3-inch peaks and valleys. And again, the deeper you go, the easier that is. If you're running a machine too shallow, and you're not getting full shatter, then you tend to have soil stacked on top of untilled soil, and it's harder to get it leveled. So the rougher the field looks, again, the indicator that we're probably running it shallow. Different types of levelers you can put on the back, and that's going to depend on your soil type. That's going to depend on moisture conditions when you're leveling, how good a job that we can do there itself. In a lot of cases, we'd like to say, well, let's be able to one-pass this and plant it in the spring. In some of the tougher conditions, though, you're probably going to have to go 2 passes. Then you could go 1 in the fall if you wanted to, and your finishing pass in the spring itself. But you should be looking for 3-inch peaks and valleys out there no matter what the residue load is out there itself. So that is fairly easy when we got 3-inch peaks and valleys after we overwinter to get across in the spring. We can get our herbicide on there if we want without streaking itself, when we can do some spraying or spreading later on in the season too if we need to itself. But again, watch the machine itself, watch the flow through, maybe even run alongside of it and take a look at it, and you should see that soil busting and flowing through there pretty uniform, and that's your key that you're getting uniform shatter.